Hello, everybody. Hello. This is Varian Grant. Welcome to the first ever issue, special issue, Indie Volt special issues. I am excited to be here with you today because we are going to be talking about some issues in the comic book industry that we generally don't really discuss. And that's the whole idea of the show. This show was created to so that we could talk about things in comics that ordinarily we kind of shy away from. And one of the things that I wanted to talk about today, and I have a guest, we want to. One of the issues that came up was race, gender, disability in comics, working in the industry, and we had a gentleman that reached out to me, and I'll tell you his story, what happened to him, and we'll talk about it for a while and see if we can get some type of idea of where this industry is headed, where we need to be headed as industry, or as workers inside of it, and see if we can make it a better industry than when we left it, than when we found it. We can leave it a better industry than when we found it. So today I have joining me for this discussion Joe D. McPhee. Hello, Joe. I will unmute you. I'm sorry. You are
Yeah.
muted. There you go.
All right. Hello, everybody.
So again, the idea of this show, special issues, is to talk about important issues. No matter, next week will be a different topic. But for Joe and me, this situation came up where our guest that we had booked, he actually had a diabetic issue about 30 minutes before he was to come on. That's one of the reasons why the show was late today, and I apologize for that. It was a medical situation, and then technology on my end started messing up. So it's pretty rare that both of those things happened at the same time. But the gentleman that wrote in and was going to be here, he is he's a white comic book creator, and he had submitted to a anthology featuring all black characters. His character that he writes is a black character, and he submitted to this anthology. He received a letter back telling him that his creation uh, was not accepted because he himself is not black. Um, he was upset, and rightfully so. I feel because that was not stated in the bylaws of the submission packet that he received. He was upset, and that's what we're going to talk about it today. Eric Hodson says, "You own a suit and a tie." I do. I do.
Yeah.
Yeah. We all own suits. We just we don't bring them
Oh,
out that often.
right.
Yeah. I joke that we used to back in the old days. You used to have to dress to go to house parties. You had to look. You had to look your best.
Hmm.
Uh, but yeah. So what we're talking about was again this issue with a creator who is not a person of color submitting to a anthology that features characters of color, and again being denied that opportunity to be featured in that anthology. Uh, Joe, you made a point before you came on. Before we came on live. You said, "Well, we submit so often under those same rules; they're just
Hmm.
unwritten." Could you elaborate on that a bit?
Well, normally when we submit to publishers in general, one of the things that they don't really look at until like the very tail end is who is creating, who is actually submitting the actual drawing stuff to that magnitude. If they like what they see, they take interest in it. But if you submit it via like mail or via like email or open call,
Mm-hmm.
it's not until they do the vetting process once they find out who you are, what nationality, gender, and everything. Where, like I said, some of the unquote unwritten bylaws come into play, and they look at your marketability, and that I believe comes into play with this particular scenario here. I don't think it's right in the aspect of the fact that, if it's an anthology dealing with black characters, that's one thing. But if it's an anthology featuring created black created characters, that's a difference. And that has to be spelled out dramatically in the bylaws.
Right, because again, you have a situation there where if it would have been black voices, I know what you want. You're telling me that the creators need to be people of color. If you just tell me, hey, we're making this comic and it's got all these black characters, do you want to submit? Well, sure. Here. I mean, if you told me today there's a book with Asian characters, or, I have relatives that are Romney, I would submit because I have a character in my comic who is, I know it's frowned upon to say this, but she is a Romney gypsy. So I will, oh yeah, I got a character like that. Here's a story with her. I'll submit. And it's one of those things. I don't think it's fair. I don't think it's fair. I think that you should be allowed into those into that comic. You should have been. There's so often I see people, because where does this stop? After a while, we'll start saying that Canadians can't submit to anthologies over in America, or vice versa. I mean, I want to be able to submit. Speaking of Canadians submitting, there's Rebel Comics, Mr. He has a comic with an Asian character, and he writes. He says, "Does that mean I can't write an LB because I am not Japanese? I got 2 words for them, and I think I know what they are. We can't." but yeah. I mean, that's where we're going, though. It seems. Joe, would you agree to that?
Well, to a greater degree, yes and no. Especially in the current climate that we're in, I just don't get. How can I put this? I don't get fandom in these days here, because to me, make a great comic, let everybody enjoy it. That should be the goal. But yet everybody has like these hidden agendas now, and that's what the real problem lies at. It's like, yes, if you want an anthology of less black characters, that's a good thing to have, but the unwritten stuff is what's going to kill it, because of the simple fact that you have some people who have certain agendas that's not willing to write that in the bylaws because they don't want to be exclusive or don't want to be considered racist or this or that or anything to that magnitude. Mm-hmm. So it's kind of like a catch-22, just to really put it out there like that.
We were many years ago, when I considered myself more of a filmmaker, I had went to a modeling agency, and I said, "Well, listen, I got this character. We have this young man, and we need to cast his sister. And so this is his biological sister we're casting." And I said, I need a white female, preferably with red hair or willing to dye it red. We need to get this, and she should be this tall, about this size, which is what I like to see. And I also made a post on a modeling forum looking for that type of look, and I got several flags and my post removed because they said that it was against their policy to spell out, like, to deny anybody because of race. And this is even in a casting situation where you have to be you want to be as descriptive as possible. They told me that I could not do that. I could not say, I'm looking for a black female, I'm looking for a white female, a Asian man, a Native American man. You can't do that. You have to, and that it's like a Band-Aid to racism. And it's not a very good one. Because what happens is, okay, so now there's you can't tell them what you want. So now everyone's submitting. Everyone is submitting for a part they had no chance at getting. And now I'm in a situation where I have to read, all of these, look at all these photos of people that I know that I'm not going to hire because I'm looking for a particular look. So when I see that, and when we go back to comics, because creating these specialty anthologies, I understand, and I definitely understand it, and I appreciate them. But to tell people, oh well, this wasn't written in the bylaws, we're not going to allow you in there because you don't have the right skin color. That's wrong because it's going to happen the other way. It's only a matter of time.
Well, it happened the other way a lot more than what people want to
Well,
realize.
sure.
But yet, with
We
the
don't talk
playing
about it.
field being completely open now, you have to have that openness. You just can't just say, "Hey, we can't accept your submission because you're not of a certain descent."
Now, when you think about that, Joe, I was told years ago that well, other than Storm, black characters on covers just don't sell. And I did a I did a bit of a test. I have a character called Jeremiah Cross. He's on the cover of his book. The book sold decently for my standards. Now, I'm not some indie powerhouse, but it sold for my standards so well. Uh, I have another book called Catharsis, all white cast. It sold well as well. I don't really believe there's this I guess the word I want to use. I don't believe there's there's this hidden agenda where people don't buy comics with black characters on them. There may be someone out there who won't do it. I mean, I've seen things, but not to a mass degree where people are putting back books because oh, Bishop is on this cover. I don't want it.
It's
Maybe they don't like the artist doing it.
maybe, but I never really saw that happening per se, at least in modern terms. But in comic book history, I mean, I'm not certain if people are familiar with Feral Lad from Legion of Superheroes.
Yeah.
That's a story that most people would need to look up because there's a reason why Feral Lad had to wear a helmet.
Mm.
And one of the fears of what they were looking at is the lack of sales in the South.
Mm.
Once people understood what Feral Lad's origin really was.
Hmm.
But
And so the helmet was well. Okay, I was like, explain to people why the helmet was there.
well, according to the origin of Feral Lad was a African American who had all these abilities, but out of fear, then you have to understand this was back in like late 50s, early 60s. There was a fear that Legion of Superheroes would be pulled off the shelves in the South because there was a lot of speculation of people accepting an African American superhero up under that up under these terms of Legion of Superheroes. So as a kind of like a way to bring the character out to get people to like the character, they put a helmet on Feral Lad.
Hmm.
So you would never know what he looked like facially. And he will always be mostly in his bestial form.
Hmm.
It wasn't until much later that it was revealed that the character was of
African
color.
American. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, unlike Black Manta, who I think they just made black after a while. Like he never was written, as a. But he never took his helmet off, and when he finally did, it was like, oh,
Mm-hmm.
So the black part of his name is actually not. It's actually it's actually about his race. It's not so much that he was Black Manta, which sets up its a whole other list of problems for that character.
Right.
But yeah, I don't. I think what we need to do, and what I like to see happen, is again creating characters that are of color that don't rely on being of color. You get what I'm saying? Like they're characters that
Well,
are characters first who happen to be character, or, people of color. I think that
well,
that right there is how you get a character to last the test of time. You look at Storm, though her being African, is a big part of who she is. That character is awesome. She was allowed to grow independently of having to, club over her head every day that she's African. Storm is one of my favorite. It's one of my favorite characters. In fact, I challenge anybody to buy themselves an X-Men arcade cabinet. Go online, find me on there. I think I'm Kid 10, and challenge me, and I beat you with Storm anytime, any day of the week. X-Men versus Street Fighter. Let's go. but but she's an awesome character, and I think that, and I know people say that we always bring up Storm, we always bring up Black Panther. There are other characters out there. Deathlock is a great character that doesn't really get the type of attention he deserves. Um, but do you give pause to creating characters of color? Ah, there you go.
she's the
Nubia.
one that's been in the kind of like in the shadows, but nobody has ever really written her to the degree to make her just as popular as Diana.
Hmm. Do you feel like Larry said earlier? Do you feel that maybe you should only be writing black characters? Do you think you could write an Asian American?
Mm-hmm. And I truly feel this way when it comes to nationality. Nationality should not come into play until you start talking about culture. So
Hmm.
pretty much, and like I said, one of the things that will drive me away from a comic book, especially nowadays, if you can't pass what I consider the downtown test. And it also gives me an idea of where the writer comes from too.
Hmm.
The downtown test is like take a look, go to your downtown, wherever city that you're at, go to wherever your downtown city is at. Take a good look of everybody that's there. You're going to see multiple nationalities that congregate there in your downtown in most cases. There's some cases where you don't. But in I would say in maybe about like 70% of the cases, you're going to see that happening. So your book should reflect that. It's like that's a kind of like a key to where you're coming from.
Hmm.
So I shouldn't have to, it shouldn't feel like I have to, wrestle and tug with people to write different people of different cultures per se, or have different nationalities in a comic book. But to write specifically to one culture is a different story. For me to write a African American character dealing with African American situations is one thing, but having a African American character that everybody could relate to is a different story within itself, and that's the more natural one because technically we all pretty much do the exact same thing. It's not until we get into like the background of that character or the crux of that character or what that makes that character tick the way that he or she does
Hmm.
comes into the play of that culture aspect of it.
I remember getting a book many years ago. I probably was still in single digits. If I may have been 10 or 11 though.
Mhm.
But I got this comic and it was done by a group of black artists. And when I opened the book up and it was black characters, they showed New York, beautifully rendered scene of New York. I mean, and when I say beautifully rendered, I was a kid, but I was like just drawn into like how just meticulously like detailed this scene was. Like the buildings, you could see the window panes. It was drawn really well. It was a black and white book though. But every character on the street, and this is Times Square, mind you. So
Mhm.
if anybody listen, if you're listening on the radio and you don't, I'm pretty sure everyone knows what Times Square, New York looks like. But New York, Times Square, New York is a mixing bowl,
Mhm.
and they had every character on the street, every character walking toward the camera, away from the camera, was African American, and that just stuck out as very odd to me. Like, wait a minute, that especially if it's not from a storyline aspect. Like, that's all that's left? Is that it? But as I'm flipping through the book, that's all I'm seeing. every character in the story, there was not another character. Every character in the story was black, and that that just didn't that didn't ring true to me. That kind of bothered me. I was like, well, wait a minute, where's And the argument is, well, pick up a Marvel comic from that era and see what you see. And I get that too. I get that idea as well, but
I mean, even worse, pick up a Batman comic.
well,
And I pick on Batman a lot because even the editorial staffs even admitted that they could be better, and they started that change recently.
mm-hmm.
And that's the key thing here. It's like they even saw that it was a problem of lack of representation, not just as far as characters and story, just representation of the city of Gotham.
Well,
Gotham is supposed to be a mixing pot,
yeah.
and yet you don't see it from issue to issue and to issue to issue. And that's one of the things that they were saying that they're going to make a lot of changes with.
Hey, let me tell you something. I'm gonna be honest with you. I ain't living in Gotham. I don't care if my job transferred me. Hey, Varian, you're going to Gotham. Like hell. I'm not going to Gotham. It's too much. Nope, not me. Not your boy. Um, but I do think that we tend to draw what we're familiar with.
Mm-hmm.
So when you see someone drawing a lot of black characters, that might be the environment they're from, or what they're currently interested in. When I was 14, 15, 16, I was very interested in Asian culture. So a lot of my characters started wearing gis and doing martial arts poses because that's what I was into. Um, and I also discovered I also had I thought every Asian woman was beautiful, so I started drawing all these Asian girls. It was one of the things that we do as artists, but um, yeah, I think that if you're creating, because I don't like the idea that a white person can't draw or can't write a black character if they're especially trying. They're not doing it to be racist. They're not doing it to be, I have a black character. I want to tell a story with this character. I understand that, and if they can reach out. Reaching out is appreciated, but I don't think it should be required.
It's never been a requirement, and that's what people fail to realize here. We had close to 80 something years
Mm-hmm.
between the two of doing that. The problem that I believe with these specialized anthologies keep forgetting is that as much as we had 80 years of this, we still have people who have great creations that's still coming out that is not like us, that still have very valid stories out there. And that's where the problem lies at. Sometimes you have to be colorblind of who creating it as opposed to the actual representation that's in the actual story itself. And that's where the true problem lies at. And a lot of times, maybe we're getting too hungry for having more people like us in the industry, or I wouldn't say in the industry, but more people like us moving towards the forefront where we're more known, like a Dwayne McDuffie.
Yeah, and they
We're
just
getting that hungry for
yeah.
that again, where that agenda is overshadowing the bigger aspect of having more representation in the books as a whole.
Yeah, they just shown. I just got to looking at the Dwayne McDuffie um, uh, documentary, uh,
Mhm.
and I thought it was I thought it was done really well. And I think for a lot of people, they don't realize how. And I see it. They even said in the documentary, in the documentary, people don't really understand how smart Dwayne was, or how much of a creative genius he was. And you could definitely his presence is definitely missed. You can feel it now. It. You know, Marv says, let's say that the director wants to make a movie about Nat King Cole. Does an Asian be cast for the part? They can try. Um,
And the casting call, they might have to. It's just weird in that aspect.
mhm.
Hollywood now is just weird in that aspect now.
They could bring an Asian in to test for the part. Doesn't mean he's gonna get it.
Mhm.
Um, Marvel says Blade, Luke Cage, Storm, they never were sidekicks. Well, depending on who you talk to, because some people have called Luke Cage Iron Fist's sidekick. I've
Hmm.
heard that's it. I've heard that's it, and whether or not it's a difference of opinion. I mean, I think that they're a partnership rather than you know a sidekick situation. Rebel Comics says, I wonder what would happen if someone was to do the opposite, looking for white characters and telling a black person they cannot submit. What do you think would happen then? Again, that's what we're talking about. What happens when that pendulum swings back the other way?
Hmm.
That's gonna be a problem, and it'll be on every website from Indie Volt to Bleeding Cool about rampant racism, and that's one of the things that I'm concerned about. Is that this you know it comes at a cost, and this situation, and I again we know with him with the gentleman having a medical situation, he had a diabetic problem that he's coming on, and he couldn't come on because of that. I don't want to put his business out there, but he does. Hopefully, I can get him on soon so he can talk to us a bit more about it. Which is why another reason why we were
Yeah,
late.
I wouldn't mind talking to him because
Yeah,
I want to know specifically what actually happened.
yeah,
To be quite honest here, because that's interesting to me. Because Rebel Comics said it best: if the pendulum was on the other way, we had hundreds of years dealing with that.
yeah,
When the shoe was on the other foot, the opposite direction, it's kind of like, why is that not in the same category?
yeah. I I would I would dare anybody. No, I wouldn't dare them, but I don't think you could do a book and say, "Hey, I'm looking for white characters only." If the minute you say that, you you're gonna be on everybody's show. They're gonna have screen caps of what you said. They're gonna take you to task. Sorry, they're gonna take you to task, and you're gonna end up probably canceled. Your
Hmm.
project, your grandchildren, all canceled for the foreseeable future. I was looking. I'm not gonna. Well, I could say this. I was looking at a picture the other day on on I think it was DeviantArt, and it was for a book of it was for a there were some Vikings, and in the third row, like with a big axe, was a black Viking, afro stuffed under the hood, and he looked cool. But you and I both know highly irregular. like under the I mean was this a diversity thing? This is forced diversity. This is a black
Um,
Viking.
yes and no, because blacks in North mythology are treated completely weird.
Hmm.
Not to say that there wasn't black Vikings, it's more along the lines of how they treated people of color in Norse mythology was very, very weird, especially when it came to their mysticism and magic.
Now you got somebody like can't even forget his name. Yusuke, the Black Samurai, who they getting ready to do a
Mhm.
movie off of.
Mhm.
Chadwick Boseman was cast in the part before his unfortunate
Mhm.
passing, but he was cast and he was gonna be that is a character that we can look back on and say, well, look, there was a Black Samurai. At least we know there was one. I'm not sure if I'll do the research. I'm not sure if I ever seen a Black Viking.
But that's the again getting back to that misnomer about Asians. There's Asians that are of the same color of you and I that have full
Yeah.
blooded 100% Asian.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
Then does not have a drop of black blood in them. But that's the thing. It's like people don't get that. As much as we want to point finger at racism, we also have to point fingers at colorism too.
Mm-hmm. Joe, how long are we gonna deal with that in our industry?
It's going to be a while. I see it getting better, but I don't see people truly being educated about it and understanding the real crux of the problem.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we like what we like. We feel comfortable what we feel comfortable with, but at the same time, I don't see people really talking about that aspect of colorism.
Right, right. Yeah, we definitely have to, I think, address this. It needs to be addressed. We need to figure it out, because if we don't, we're going to run into a lot of situations that maybe 2 or 3 decades from now we're going to look back on and say, "Ooh, that wasn't the right call."
Mhm.
That wasn't the right call. We shouldn't have done that. Joe, I want to thank you for joining me here on this episode of Indie Volt Special Issues. Again, hopefully we're giving people something to think about, something to talk about. And that's the whole idea of this particular show, giving people something to talk about and some type of, uh, you know, starting point to have these conversations. I know you're always willing to be contacted online to continue these conversations afterwards. Where can I do that at?
You could contact me directly on Facebook at Joe D. McPhee. We could talk there. Just give me a PM and say, "Hey, I saw you on Indie Vote." We'll talk a little bit more about that. They could look at my interview with you, where we talked about a little bit about this, especially from a different aspect within our own
Mm-hmm.
on that interview, and you can get that on the YouTube channel from the Desolate Small Press Publisher. Just look up the interview with Varian Grant that I did, and we
Yeah.
talked a little bit about this very topic.
Yeah.
I don't have a problem talking about the topic as a whole, but I just hope that people are open minded enough to see both sides, and that's the hard thing to do.
Yeah. 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 And we want to thank everybody for watching. Thank you for looking at our, and coming into the chat and talking with us about it. We're really, I'm excited for the future of Indie Volt Special Issues. I know next week we're going to talk a little bit about. We're going to show what the topic will be before the show. May have more than one guest too, but they'll each have the opportunity to come in and say their piece. It's going to be a one-on-one show. It won't be a show where we have a lot of voices. It'll be just like this. This is how special issue show will be ran for the foreseeable future. That may change depending on certain topics. But Joe, again, thanks for joining me here on Indie Volt Special Issues. And again, I'm looking forward to a time where everything in our industry maybe doesn't get. We don't have so much racial tension in the industry right now. Some of the people who work in it aren't helping. Let's just say that they aren't helping. So on both sides. There are people who are for and against it, and it's creating quite a mess. So hopefully we can start to see our way through this and get back to doing the important thing, which is making damn comic books.
Telling great stories and just doing what we got to do to tell them.
Yes, sir. Thanks for joining us. This has been Indie Volt Special Edition. I'm Varian Grant, KYD_V on the Twitter. Contact me there. Reach out to Indie Volt on Facebook. And tomorrow, Indie Volt presents It Came From Webtoon with Eric Hodson. I think I'll be joining me once again as co-host. And then Tuesday night, 9 p.m., Indie Volt Live Wire. Here, heck where you're watching. Make sure you check out Indie Volt TV on Roku. Make sure you check out Indie Volt Radio on Google Play. We'll see you there. We'll see you soon. MJS Comics says, amen, make comics. That's right. Make comics. That's all that matters. Put your head down and make books. That way the egos get sorted out and everything.
Mm-hmm.
All right, you guys have a good one. Stay safe. We'll see you soon.